inside Arena Mexico was already deafening. Masked wrestlers were flying through the air. The ring ropes were shaking. Thousands of Mexican fans were on their feet, screaming at the top of their lungs. And sitting ringside, trying to enjoy a rare night off during BTS's world tour, were 4 members of BTS: Jin, Suga, Jimin, and Jungkook. At first, they were just spectators, laughing, cheering, completely immersed in the wild, unpredictable world of Lucha Libre. But then something happened that nobody saw coming. One of the wrestlers suddenly climbed onto the ropes, pointed directly at Jimin, and shouted into the microphone. The cameras instantly cut to his face. The arena erupted. And within seconds, thousands of people were chanting one name: Jimin, Jimin, Jimin. Jimin looked around in disbelief. He laughed, covered his face. And then came the invitation that turned a fun night out into one of the most unforgettable moments of the entire Mexico trip. The wrestler stretched out his arm and motioned for Jimin to come into the ring. For a split second, everything froze. Was he actually going to do it? And when Jimin finally stood up, Arena Mexico exploded. But what happened after he stepped toward the ring? That's the part that sent ARMY into absolute chaos. It was supposed to be a simple night. No choreography. No stadium pressure. No cameras documenting every movement for a performance. Just 4 friends taking a break from the intensity of the BTS World Tour and experiencing one of Mexico's most iconic traditions, Lucha Libre. And if you've ever watched Lucha Libre, you know it's not just wrestling. It's theater. It's comedy. It's athleticism. It's pure energy. The masks. The music. The larger-than-life characters. Everything feels exaggerated in the best possible way. So honestly, it was the perfect setting for BTS, especially Jimin. Because Jimin has always had a natural ability to respond to dramatic moments with childlike excitement. And from the second he entered Arena Mexico, that excitement was impossible to hide. Fans inside the arena began noticing the BTS members almost immediately. At first, there was a ripple of recognition. A few gasps. Some hesitant whispers. Then the realization spread section by section. BTS is here. And suddenly the atmosphere shifted. Phones shot into the air. People turned away from the ring just to catch a glimpse of the members. But instead of seeming uncomfortable, the members leaned into the experience. Jin laughed loudly at the wrestlers' exaggerated antics. Suga watched with his trademark calm expression, though the occasional smile gave him away. Jungkook looked completely fascinated by the acrobatics. And Jimin? He was glowing, eyes wide, clapping enthusiastically, reacting to every dramatic move like a kid discovering something magical. That alone was enough to melt fans. But then the wrestlers noticed them too. And that changed everything. One of the most charismatic wrestlers in the match suddenly paused. He turned toward ringside, then dramatically pointed at BTS. The crowd erupted instantly. The giant screens zoomed in on the members. Jin burst into laughter. Jungkook ducked his head shyly. Suga smiled in quiet amusement. And Jimin? He looked genuinely stunned. He placed a hand over his chest as if asking, "Me?" The wrestler nodded emphatically. The arena got louder. And if you've ever seen Jimin when he's caught off guard, you know exactly what happened next. That adorable, slightly embarrassed laugh. The kind that makes his shoulders shake. The kind that sends ARMY into immediate emotional collapse. But this was only the beginning, because the wrestler wasn't done. The match continued for another few minutes, but the energy around BTS kept building. Every time the camera cut to them, the arena cheered. And every time Jimin smiled, the crowd reacted even louder. It was becoming clear that something special was unfolding. Then, after an especially dramatic sequence in the ring, the wrestler grabbed the microphone again. He said a few words in Spanish. The crowd roared. And then he turned directly toward Jimin. This time there was no ambiguity. He extended his hand and gestured clearly. "Come to the ring." The reaction was immediate. Jin doubled over laughing. Jungkook stared at Jimin in disbelief. Suga smirked as if he already knew chaos was about to happen. And Jimin? He froze. For one precious second, he looked like he genuinely didn't know whether this was real. Would he stay in his seat? Would he politely decline? Or would he actually step into one of the most legendary wrestling rings in the world? The chanting started softly, then grew louder and louder, until the entire arena was chanting his name. Jimin, Jimin, Jimin. Imagine that moment. Thousands of strangers from another country, in the middle of a traditional Mexican wrestling event, calling your name with pure excitement. Jimin covered his mouth. His eyes widened. He looked at the other members for help. Jin was laughing too hard to be useful. Jungkook looked like he was ready to push him toward the ring himself. Suga's expression said everything. "You have to do this." And that's when Jimin stood up. The sound inside Arena Mexico became almost unbearable. The kind of roar that rattles your chest. The kind you don't just hear, you feel. And with that shy smile and unmistakable nervous energy, Jimin started walking toward the ring. Every step felt surreal. The cameras followed him. The wrestlers bounced with excitement. Fans screamed so loudly that some recordings clipped into distortion. And Jimin, despite being one of the biggest stars on the planet, looked adorably humble. He bowed to the crowd, waved, laughed in disbelief. For a moment, he looked less like a global superstar and more like someone living out a completely unexpected dream. As he approached the apron, one of the wrestlers offered his hand. Jimin accepted it. And the second he stepped onto the edge of the ring, Arena Mexico exploded. The symbolism of that moment was powerful. A Korean artist beloved around the world, being welcomed into one of Mexico's most iconic cultural spaces. Two worlds meeting in the most joyful way possible. An army could feel it. But what happened inside the ring made the moment even more unforgettable. Jimin stood at the center of the ring, turning slowly to take in the sight. Thousands of fans, lights flashing, masked wrestlers cheering beside him, and his expression, pure wonder. He laughed, covering his face again as if the reality of the moment still hadn't fully sunk in. One wrestler raised Jimin's hand dramatically like a victorious champion. The crowd roared. Another draped a Lucha Libre mask over his shoulder. Jimin touched it carefully, clearly appreciating the significance. Then he did something so simple, yet so heartfelt, that fans instantly melted. He bowed deeply, not just to the wrestlers, not just to the crowd, but to the entire moment. A gesture of respect, gratitude, humility, and the arena answered with one of the loudest ovations of the night. Back at ringside, the BTS members were loving every second. Jin clapped and laughed with complete abandon. Jungkook looked impossibly proud. Suga, though more reserved, wore a warm smile that said he was genuinely happy for Jimin. It was one of those rare moments where you could feel the bond between them without anyone needing to say a word. And Jimin seemed to feel it too. He glanced toward the members and laughed, almost as if saying, "Can you believe this?" Honestly, that glance alone was enough to send fans into tears. Because beneath the spectacle, this was just four friends enjoying a beautiful, unexpected experience together. And those are often the moments that stay with us longest. Then came the sweetest twist of all. The wrestler handed Jimin the microphone. The arena instantly quieted in anticipation. Jimin looked startled. He laughed nervously. held the microphone with both hands, and in his soft, sincere voice, he thanked the crowd. He expressed how honored he felt to be there and how much he was enjoying Mexico. Simple words, but delivered with genuine warmth. The reaction was immediate. Fans screamed, cheered. Some visibly cried. Because in that brief moment, it felt like the distance between artist and audience completely disappeared. This wasn't about a scripted performance. It was about connection, and everyone in that building could feel it. Eventually, Jimin returned to his seat, but the energy had changed forever. Every time the camera showed him afterward, the crowd erupted even louder. He seemed more relaxed now, smiling constantly, laughing with the members, and reacting to the action in the ring with even more enthusiasm. At one point, Jungkook leaned over to say something that made Jimin throw his head back in laughter. Jin kept teasing him. Suga watched with that quietly affectionate expression fans know so well. And ARMY, completely destroyed. Because moments like this reveal a side of BTS that feels deeply personal. Unscripted, joyful, authentic. The kind of memory that no one could have planned. By the end of the night, clips of the moment were everywhere. Fans across the world watched in disbelief as Jimin stood in the legendary ring of Arena Mexico, smiling like someone who couldn't quite believe his own life. Comments poured in by the thousands. Only Jimin could turn a wrestling match into the cutest moment ever. He looked so genuinely happy. This is cultural exchange at its best. Mexico and Jimin were meant to meet. And honestly, those reactions captured the heart of the moment perfectly. Because this wasn't just viral content. It was a reminder of how music and genuine human warmth can connect people across languages, borders, and traditions. Think about what happened that night. A Korean artist on tour in Mexico. A centuries-old wrestling tradition. Thousands of fans from different backgrounds sharing one unforgettable experience. No one needed to speak the same language to understand what the moment meant. The joy was universal. The respect was mutual. And the emotion was real. That's what made it so powerful. And perhaps that's why it resonated so deeply with people around the world. Because underneath the spectacle, it told a simple truth. When people meet each other with curiosity, humility, and genuine appreciation, something beautiful happens. For Jimin, it was probably just one unexpected moment during a busy tour schedule. But for the fans who were there, and for the millions who watched later, it became something much more. A memory. A symbol of connection. A reminder that some of the most meaningful moments happen when no one is expecting them. And maybe that's why Jimin's expression in the ring was so unforgettable. He wasn't performing. He was simply present. Fully, sincerely, joyfully present. And in a world that often feels rushed and scripted, that authenticity is incredibly moving. So let me ask you this. If you had been in Arena Mexico that night, watching Jimin step into the ring with that shy, disbelieving smile, do you think you would have kept your composure? Or would you have been screaming right along with everyone else? Tell me in the comments. And if this story made you smile, brought back the excitement of that unforgettable night, or reminded you why you love BTS so much, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because sometimes the most magical moments aren't the ones we expect. They're the ones that surprise us completely and stay in our hearts forever.